Chapter 43. The Kingdom of the Blind. Are you not happy that your quest is complete, and you can turn to your studies at Canterlot? Rocks. I can't believe this whole war has been about rocks. Gems. Coal. Rary said something about a meteorite, but she got all evasive when suddenly she realized I'd overheard. Whatever. Like, it was hard to figure out. Sometimes I'm slow, but I'm not stupid. Dumb rocks. I used to think rocks were cool. I mean, my big sister has gems for a cutie mark. And Pinkie Pie once lived on a rock farm. We even used to play a game, Scootaloo and Apple Bloom and me. We had found the rock that Rarity had gotten her cutie mark from, and I made Twilight Sparkle enchant it so that we could make it open and close. She kinda owed us for the whole Smarty Pants thing. We called it the Rock of Destiny, and we pretended that when we opened it, it would give us our cutie marks. Twilight made us so each of us could set a passphrase to open it. Mine was Dumb Rock, so I could pretend to be just like my sister. I changed it to Apple Pie for a while, but then changed it back. Just as well. My sis and I haven't seen Apple Pie in a long time. Not since the Ministries. I hope you don't mind me using your place. I mean, of course you can't mind, but I hope you don't anyway. Sometimes I just have to get away from all the noise. It's so nice being here. I really love your flowers. Anyway, I guess I'm thinking about rocks because we found chunks of that meteorite when we dug into Luna's old foundry under the castle last week. It was all broken up because they had taken all but the ore of it out, and they'd sealed up the pieces. I kinda felt sorry for it. Ponies and zebras blame it for all sorts of stupid stuff, but it's not the rock's fault. It's just a rock. And I kinda knew what it's like to be blamed for stuff. Seems, sometimes, everything I do just makes things worse. So I had them make one of the bigger chunks into a cornerstone. As an apology, or something. I don't know. Make it feel useful. Yes, I know that's stupid. It's just a rock. So, I guess, not dumb rocks. Just dumb ponies and zebras. I came up here yesterday. Building that last stable in Everfree was my idea, so I wanted to be here, especially after we started having problems. Rarity said that Everfree Forest is the one place she was sure the zebras wouldn't attack, so I thought, why are we putting all the stables in places we think they would attack? Doesn't it make sense to put at least one of them someplace they won't? Yes, the forest is dangerous, but it can't be that dangerous. You lived here, and my sister and her friends used to go in all the time. Well, just another of my ideas that ended up a mess. Apple Bloom had warned me about the poison joke, but was it always this aggressive? It's been really bad the last 3 days. Moonbeam said it was like the excavation was attracting it. He thinks either it's vibrosensitive, which isn't even a word, or it wants to be near people. But that doesn't make any sense. It's a plant, right? But then, Apple Bloom says you told her the plants want to laugh. How can a plant want something? I'm sorry. I know I'm rambling. I guess my thoughts are just too coherent. I'm just trying to work things out. I think we've lost our faith. Does that make any sense? It's like everything we're supposed to believe in has gotten dark and crumbled. Like the air is heavy. No, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know. Like everything is too real, you know? Like when you're just a filly and you look up to some pony, and they're your idol. But then you learn they're not perfect, like you imagined. That they're flawed, like every pony else. Maybe that's just growing up, though. It's like we've forgotten how to have heroes. Only worse. We've forgotten how to believe in each other, in ponies. Even Scootaloo, she's trying to fix ponies with all these experiments. I once told Scootaloo that I thought she was trying to make ponies like they were when they were kids. You know what she said? She said, "Nostalgia is mostly just make-believe." Isn't that horrible? I've started having second thoughts. Maybe we should just stick to saving ponies. Maybe it's not right for us to fix things. But then, won't it all be for nothing, like Scootaloo says? I don't know anymore. Sometimes the experiments feel, I don't know, wrong. I know they're not dangerous. We made extra sure. But I don't feel right doing the experiments on ponies. We're just trying to survive. Isn't that wrong? It's not like it's their fault. Most of them, anyway. It's the ones in Stable 1, maybe. I just want to save them and give them a chance. Kind of like the rocks, I guess. I even almost told Rarity about the experiments. But I didn't. Because, well, I'd be betraying Scootaloo and Applebloom if I told. And I'm not sure Rarity would do the right thing even if I told her. I don't really like the Ministry of Image. And if that's what she is now... Like I said before, we haven't been apple pie in a long time. Sometimes the little statue of Rarity that my sister gave me feels more like my sister than she does. Today, I did ask Scootaloo if Stable 101 could be made a control stable instead. But she and Applebloom both insisted the experiment here was too important. And part of me still thinks Scootaloo's right. Like, maybe we really do have to fix ponies. To figure out what went wrong so everything doesn't get so bad again. But how many times do we have to try before we get it right? And what happens when we fail? This time, the cost can be so much more than tree sap and pine needles. Scootaloo has been looking at me funny. I think maybe she knows I'm having second thoughts. Anyway, sorry for all the rambling. Thanks for letting me use your place. And thanks for listening. Applebloom is right. You really are a good person to talk to, Zecora. We're all very, very sad about what happened to you. I hope you're at peace. You better take a look at this. We all stared upwards, our eyes lifting above the dark silhouettes of the forest trees. The sky was a cloudy haze that glowed a hellish orange, lit from the fires that stretched for miles below. Our gazes were transfixed on the massive black shadow slowly moving through the ever-free fire sky, brilliant flashes of lightning erupting along its sides. It was moving towards us, but we were not its destination. The Overcast. This was a day too soon. Goddesses damn him. Colonel Autumn Leaf was jumping the whistle on his own attack. My brother's on that ship. Calamity's tone was dour. I pranced in agitation. This was not good. Why the hell would he... A sudden wave of weariness passed over me. It had been far too long, and far too rough a day. I needed sleep. I wasn't going to get it. Above us, more lightning flashes as the 4 raptors, moored into the overcast, began to pull away. Their smaller thunderclouds pulling free from the Thunderhead warships, massive ones. 2 of them began to move overhead, while the other 2 flanked the mobile siege platform. Okay, I said, spinning around and addressing the others. Change of plan. I looked over the ponies, and Griffin, who had followed me this far. Part of me dreaded what I was about to say, but part of me knew it would somehow be this way. We'll have to split up. Before any pony could protest, I explained. The Enclave is moving on the cathedral now. They'll be there in, a few hours? I looked at Calamity, who nodded at my assessment. And we can't all go. Zenith shouldn't be moved anymore, especially not after Lifebloom uses a spell. With a grudging reluctance, I added, and neither should the Hellhound. Velvet Remedy quickly agreed, staring back at her patients. Lifebloom was moving about Zenith's bed, preparing to cast his Triplantation spell. Lifebloom and I need to stay, she intoned, sparing me the task of saying it. She smiled sadly to Calamity. And you, love, need to go. Pyrelight, I instructed. Keep them safe. The Balefire Phoenix hooted, perching up straight and giving me a one-winged salute. I don't know if I can do this, Calamity admitted. After all, he's done. After all the ponies dead, I know Autumn needs to be put down. But I don't think I can. He looked at me, his eyes wide and hurting. My own brother. I remembered Pride's change after learning the Enclave had marked Calamity for death. That, in fact, Autumn Leaf, his own brother, had ordered my best friend's execution. Then it's a good thing you're taking me with you, Reggie said flatly. Velvet Remedy gave her a pained look. It's a hard thing, going against kin, Reggie said. To take down your own brother. I don't think I could have done it if Cage had gone bad. Nobody blames you for not taking that shot. Calamity watched her check the load on her guns. Guns he had custom made for the adolescent Griffin. If it helps at all, you'll be putting a stop to his murdering way, even still. It struck me that Reggie viewed those guns as a stand-in for Calamity, a way for him to be part of what he needed to be, but couldn't, much the same way she carried Cage's blades. So, Lil Pip, what's the plan? Calamity asked. How the hell are we supposed to make it through miles of fire, and whatever else the Everfree keeps packing its pockets with, and get to Red Ass Base before they do? We don't, I answered him simply. I raised a hoof to the sky, pointing towards the overcast. We're going to hitch a ride. On that. Calamity, Reggie, and I made our preparations, while Lifebloom's horn glowed, and he tried to work a miracle. We didn't have a lot of time. We wanted to give the overcast enough time to pass by us, but not enough to move out of sight. This is a stealth mission, I proclaimed, wincing at the groans. Hey, we've got this one in the bag. We've got 2 stealth cloaks now, I pointed out, counting the albino Hellhound's cloak along with Zenith's. And I have the advanced stealth buck, which only works for a few hours, Velvet Remedy warned. True, but we shouldn't need it even for that, I suggested. Once we get up there, we'll snag a set of Enclave magically powered armor for Calamity, and I'll take the cloak. Ah, crap, Calamity muttered, dropping his head, tossing off his hat. Can't be bringing this, then. He stared at his trusty black Desperado hat. Half of it was badly burned from the Buccaneer blaze. To be honest, it no longer really looked right on his head. In fact, it made me wince, remembering how painfully hurt he had been. I love that hat. I'll take good care of it until you get back, Velvet Remedy promised, her words carrying a subtle insistence that he would come back. Brilliant scarlet light flashed over Zenith, that settled into a halo around her head, making her look like a sleeping angel. I remembered how she looked with bat-like wings the day she had saved her daughter. The mental images combined strangely. Lifebloom was sweating, straining, in focused concentration. Calamity dumped the contents of his saddlebags, which I swear took up more space in the hut than the saddlebags could possibly have held, and had apparently come to include several bottles and jars of herbs and dust that Calamity had scavenged from the hut itself, insisting he wanted to travel light. You won't fight your brother, but you'll be taking as much of his ship as you can carry, won't you? Yep. Reggie, meanwhile, had decided that she was as ready as she could be, and was leaning in the doorway, smoking another cigarette. Velvet Remedy huffed at her. Yeah, right, Reggie said, with a roll of her eyes. I shouldn't smoke. Might burn down the forest or something. You could at least show some respect for your health, Velvet commented. Reggie just lifted an eyebrow, then waved a wing in the direction of the ponies she had chosen to assist, particularly me. Yeah, 'cause I'm well known for making healthy choices. Velvet opened her muzzle, a retort on her tongue, then closed it, as she looked heartbreakingly defeated. It's too late, isn't it? About the smoking, or me following you lot? Reggie blew a ring of smoke. The way I see it, if I quit, it'd be like saying I made a mistake in insisting on lending a wing. And that would be like saying Cage made a mistake. And, well, that just ain't gonna happen. But Velvet wasn't talking about Reggie's life choices. She turned to me with a horrified look. Little Pip, please, be honest. Her voice was fragile. The fire, how long before it reaches Fluttershy? She swallowed hard. It's already there, isn't it? She's already dead. Or... My lovely unicorn friend could not bring herself to say that Fluttershy was dying. But it was clear from the pain in her expression that she was imagining Fluttershy, burning alive slowly in utter agony. It was too cruel an end for too cruel a life, and I couldn't bring myself to say that. By my best estimate, the fire had been there since nightfall. Maybe it was corrupted kindness to be dishonest about this, but I just couldn't tell her the truth. It would destroy her. I opened my muzzle to lie, but I was interrupted before I managed the first word. Doesn't matter, Reggie told her, drawing stares and glares from everyone except Lifebloom, who was too deep in concentration to notice his surroundings. Velvet stared, muzzle open, her heart tearing apart in front of us. What? Reggie looked taken aback. Oh, wait. She looked at us all. You don't know? Know what? Calamity said carefully. The fire ain't burning the trees, Reggie announced. My jaw was not the only one to drop. She looked at us and shook her head. Hells, it'd be easier if I showed you. I don't think you'd believe me otherwise. What do you mean the fires aren't burning the trees? Just that, Reggie replied. Got a good look after you all ran off and left me half dead in a tree. As she said that, her voice was not accusatory. If anything, she sounded amused. Red Eye's fire brigade pushed past my position, saw him hose down the moss-covered tree with one of their flamethrowers. I swear on my mother's name that the flames went right through the tree like it wasn't even there. But Velvet's voice betrayed her desperation. But we saw the trees burning when we were fighting the Wonderbolts, remember? She looked at me, and I could sense that she wanted me to tell her it was just her imagination. That Reggie was right, and there was nothing to worry about. I thanked Luna that this time I didn't need to lie. Those trees were burning because of that trick Skydive pulled, I remembered. That wasn't from Red Eye's fires. Calamity shook his head, looking at Regina. And you didn't mention this before? Hells, I thought you knew. Besides, I was totally focused on the rest of the freaky. The griffin tossed her cigarette to the floor and ground it under a hindpaw. The trees didn't catch, but the moss on it sure ignited. Then, it began to heave and thrash and tear itself off the tree like it was burning up. I swear it looked like it was screaming. I'll have nightmares for weeks. Well, damn. Calamity whistled. The fire isn't burning? Fluttershy's safe? Warning emotions racked Velvet Remedy. Yes, I muttered, my eyes growing wide as the gears of my mind slowly turning again. I'd seen the reports of Red Eye's research into bypass spells. His scientists had been working to apply a bypass to some sort of weapon effect. The full details had been redacted after the research had been successful. Zenith had told me she was working in one of the buildings where they were creating flamethrower fuel, but I'd never put the two together. At least, for now. For now? Velvet's voice was small, but hopeful. Red Eye ain't the sort to waste resources, is he, Lil Pip? Calamity asked, clearly following my train of thought. He's cleansing the every forest, but he ain't gonna burn down the trees. He wants the lumber. I nodded. I could see a calculating light in Velvet's eyes. Her quest now had a timeline that she could see. Zenith had to recover, and they had to brew a remedy that would save Fluttershy, before Red Eye's forces finished burning the forest and proceeded far enough in their harvesting to reach the top of Killing Joke Hill. You want this? The Hellhound interrupted abruptly, holding up his zebra stealth cloak. His bindings lay useless around him. You're not getting it, unless you give me something back. There was a dangerous glint in his eyes. What do you want in return for your generous offer? Velvet asked, diplomatically, as she pointedly looked at the stump of a leg she had treated and dressed. Them claw blades, the Hellhound barked, pointing at Cage's Hellhound claw knives, strapped in Reggie's belt. Oh, hells no! The young griffin flew almost within claw's reach of the Hellhound, guns drawn, before she was yanked short, her tail in Calamity's teeth. These are my brothers. Figure they belonged to one of our brothers before him, the Hellhound growled back, unimpressed and vicious. Hey, just hold on. Calamity came as close to shouting as he could, without letting Reggie's tail out of his mouth. I figure we can shoot you and have both. He shifted, pointing his battle saddle at the Hellhound. Being an amputee had not made him any less dangerous. The albino Hellhound was swifter than any of us expected. He had an arm around Velvet Remedy. His claws, sharp enough and strong enough to slice metal, right against her face. The barest touch was drawing blood. Velvet eeped sharply. How fast? He challenged coldly. I levitated little Macintosh in front of me. Let her go, real gentle. Or you are so amazingly dead, it won't matter. Astonishingly, the crippled Hellhound stared down at the 5 guns, pointed at him, and didn't blink. Velvet's horn flashed. The Hellhound dropped limply back into his bed, one of his claws sliding across Velvet's face, as his hand fell away. Blood gushed from the wound, staggering her. Don't shoot him, she ordered, as she stumbled back, holding a hoof to her face. The claw had barely missed slicing open one of her eyes. "Little Pip, your spell, please." We had used up all the bandages and potions we had. There was nothing left to aid Velvet, with but the dark spell I had been granted by the Black Book. Once again, I let myself draw knowledge to create a cast from Velvet's own blood, wrapping half her head in a ruddy mask. Calamity rushed to Velvet's side, shoring her up. He growled at the hellhound, and clearly, really wanted to shoot the monster. But Velvet wouldn't let him. Instead, she turned to her attacker and spoke with a touch of sympathy. "I completely agree with how adherent it is that some ponies have made weapons out of your kind's body parts." She looked at us, with the one eye not hidden under solidified blood. "And any pony here who doesn't should try to imagine seeing a creature wielding a weapon made of pony hooves." Addressing the extremely pissed-looking albino again, "So in trade for the use of your cloak, we are giving you this." Her horn glowed again, and Zenith's Hellhound Claw helmet floated over and rested upon the albino hellhound's chest, ignoring the strangling sound of protest from Calamity. "But you will not be taking Cage Grimfeather's blades from Eugenia," she said, sternly. "I am sorry." She frowned. "And, for your aggression, you will be spending the rest of your time together under the effects of this spell. It is never intelligent to attack your doctor." Velvet Remedy stepped away. Then her knees gave a little tremble. A moment later, she had dropped to them, breathing heavily, letting her panic wash over her now that the crisis had passed. Calamity laid down next to her and held her, nuzzling her gently. She buried her face in his mane, shedding tears both from the roller coaster of hope, despair, and mortal danger that was the last few minutes had thrown my friend through. The scarlet glow faded, and Lifebloom staggered, slumping on the floor next to Zenith. Pulling her muzzle out of Calamity's orange mane, Velvet Remedy immediately bombarded Lifebloom with questions about how it went. The only answer he could give was a weak, "We shall see. It's up to her now." "Then she'll pull through," Velvet Remedy proclaimed, her breathing still a little shaky. She seemed to draw strength from caring for her friends. "Zenith's a fighter, a survivor, more than you could know." I discovered I was smiling. Just a little. Somewhere, some pony gave what sounded like a polite cough. I caught Reggie's movement out of the corner of my eye. She drew her guns at the speed of Rainbow Dash, and had the twin guns pointed out the doorway in front of her. "We've got company," she warned, growling. Damn it. I was so hoping the Enclave would pass Akora's hut without taking interest. I really didn't want to fight now. Velvet moaned. Behind me, Lifebloom was trying to get up, but he was too exhausted to stand, barely able to keep his eyes open. "Enclave?" he asked. Firelight swept across the room to perch on Reggie's head, glaring out of the door with her. "No," Reggie said, wincing at Firelights' talons. "Red-Eye. One of his damned Sprite bots." True, it made sense he'd have some wandering this close to his home base. But I heard no music. "Watcher!" "Wait!" I called out, waving. "Hold your fire. This might be a friendly." Thunder rumbled overhead, like the steady beat of war drums. The overcast was passing directly above us, the massive siege platform blocking out the fiery light reflecting off the clouds of smoke. The flowers ringed Zecora's hut seemed to have shed even more beautiful bioluminescence in the deeper darkness. Colonel Autumn Leaf was either oblivious to our presence, or he was too focused now to care. "It's been a long time since my home felt crowded," Watcher was saying, with the mechanical monotone of the Spritebot. I couldn't tell if he was pleased or complaining. "At least half the people you have gathered, or asked me to gather, have already arrived." "Huh?" Calamity blinked. "Lil Pip? You asked him to do what now?" "We don't have time," I told my Pegasus friend bluntly. "The Enclave is moving too fast. We can't be everywhere at once." The truth was, I was about to ask even more of Spike, and he wasn't going to like it. "Don't you mean we?" Calamity asked pointedly. The little pony in my head scowled at me, and virtually grabbed my head, making me nod apologetically. "Yes, but that's kind of the point," I offered lamely. "We need every ally we can get if we're going to pull this off." "I know you still haven't filled us in on exactly what this plan of yours is," Calamity goused. "I'm trusting there's a good reason for that." "There is," I assured him. "Yeah, great reason. You would try to stop me if you knew. In the meantime, I've asked Watcher to contact all the people we know who may be able to help and start bringing them together. And I'm afraid I have some bad news," Watcher said through the Spritebot. "One of your guests isn't going to be able to make it." I felt an icy cold wash through my mane. The obvious implication was that someone had died. "Who?" I asked, the little pony in my head suggesting we really didn't want to know. "What happened?" "Homage," Watcher said, and my world plunged out from under me, leaving me in a numbly cold void. "Luna. No." The sensation was as intense as it was brief, dispelled by Watcher's next words. "And nothing yet. But the Enclave has figured out that DJ Pwn 3 is moving from one SPP tower to another, hacking in to make those broadcasts. And they've started parking raptors at each of the towers, just waiting for her to make her next move. Thank you, Luna. Celestia, please keep her safe." A huge part of me wanted to dash off to her aid, but doing so could lead the enemy right to her, and I knew she would not approve of me abandoning the good fight just to make it to her side. Fortunately, the Enclave doesn't have enough raptors to spare for every tower, and she's not making it easy for them, Watcher explained. "But their dragnet is eventually going to catch her." "Not if we can help it." Calamity stepped up beside me, putting a hoof on my head. "If I know Lil Pip, this plan of hers is going to pull heat off of Homage in a big way." I gave him a worried but thankful smile. He was right about that. We had to win now. We always had to. But now, it was for more than just the wasteland. Now I was fighting to keep Homage safe. I realized how horribly selfish it was of me to place the safety of one pony as equal to the needs of tens or even hundreds of thousands of ponies. But I didn't care. Homage was Homage. And I was allowed to be just a little selfish when it came to her, wasn't I? Homage herself insisted she couldn't make it. She doesn't want to risk drawing the Enclave to the rest of the Resistance, is what she's calling us, guys. Resistance Radio. That's what the 10 Pony residents had been calling DJ Pwn 3's broadcasts. Clearly, she'd adopted the moniker. "I'll try to have the Spritebot nearby, so she can talk to us," Watcher offered. "But she told me to tell you that she's sending some more allies your way." Allies were good. I liked allies. We could use all the friends we could get. Then, reality struck. The blow hit me, cold and sharp and hard. knocking me over. Part of me had been clinging to the belief that I would see Homage again when I gathered every pony together at Spike's cave. At that final gathering, before I set my plan into action. A final respite before I galloped headlong into my destiny. But Homage, the one pony I wanted and needed to see most, wasn't going to be there. At most, I might hear her voice, speak to her, but she would not be there to touch, to hold, to kiss goodbye. My legs were wet noodles, utterly unable to hold the titanic weight of my breaking heart. I was never going to see Homage again. With a burst of static, the Spritebot started playing a heavy, ominous music of the Enclave. Watcher was gone. His time was up. I barely noticed. I was too busy crying my heart out. The drumming of the overcast thunderclouds was receding. There was no more time. We needed to go. I realized I could still hear the low horns and booming drums, the mournful tones of violins, the music from the Spritebot. It hadn't wandered away. It was watching us. I knew there was no way that Red-Eye had been able to use these things for so long. He had been running operations in Philadelphia, from a Ministry Morale hub, without knowing these machines could be used to spy. Grim resolve flooded through me, drowning out the agony in my heart. Not killing it, but just letting me not feel it for a while. I pushed myself to my hooves and strode determinedly over to where the Spritebot was floating, amongst the trees, and still within sight of Zecora's hut. Red-Eye knew we were here, knew where to find us. I wanted to make it clear that wasn't necessary. "We're coming," I told the Spritebot, sure that I was all but addressing Red-Eye directly. "That's what you wanted, right?" The Spritebot kept playing music. I stared at it for a long minute, possibly two, before turning away in disgust. "Calamity, Reggie, let's go hitch ourselves a ride." I started to walk away from the Spritebot, then stopped. I trotted back around to it, my horn glowing softly as I announced, "Sorry, I have to kill you." This time, however, I wasn't addressing Red-Eye, but the Spritebot itself. My Pipleg was still dead, and I was going to use the little spy machine to reboot it. My telekinesis opened the repair hatch on the Spritebot and yanked its spark battery. The Spritebot dropped like a stone, dead. Or the robot equivalent of dead. Sitting, I proceeded to disconnect audio and video feeds, then bring it back to life. A robot vegetable, or something like that. Whatever. Stupid robots, making all my metaphors awkward. I looked down at where my Pipbuck was grotesquely melded to my foreleg. Miserably, I realized that maybe it was for the best that Homage never saw me again. Let her last memories of me be from before the Balefire bomb, before Canterlot, and before Arbrew. Laprim approached me as I was rebooting my Pipleg. I assumed he was going to offer comfort, or ask a question about Watcher or the Gathering. I preempted the conversation. Somebody else on my mind. "How did you meet Homage?" My voice sounded small to me. I didn't have the will to hide the sadness that was leaking into it. Lightbloom paused, then sat down next to me. "The Twilight Society assigned her to me," he told me. "They thought I would be able to connect with her." Leaning forward on his forehooves, Lightbloom gave me the story. When she first gained residency in Tenpenny Tower, she was in mourning. She had lost the mare she loved, and she didn't know if she could ever find love again. He smiled gently. I'm happy to see she was wrong. That only made it hurt worse. My heart was bleeding into the ground, and I could feel the tears building up in my eyes. They felt like fire. Even worse, The little pony in my head didn't really want to hear about Homage's past loves. Of course, she had to have at least one. You can't get to be as good as she was without practice, right? But I like being able to pretend otherwise. Even though I knew better. Even though I was pretty sure I knew who it was. Joke blew. I wasn't going to be jealous. Not of Homage's dead love. I refused to be that horrible. We were the same age, and I had suffered loss of my own, that the others in the society thought was similar. Lapham continued, his tone suggesting that the society was in error on that supposition. He explained, I was kicked out of the Republic after they discovered I had a preference for stallions. I blinked in surprise. What? The Republic, I remembered, was the little town that the raiders from Fluttershy's cottage had massacred. A bizarre, cult-like group of weirdos, but not bad ponies according to the Wasteland Crusaders. They kicked you out because of that? I was astonished. Since my youth, I had been resigned to my feelings for mares, lowering my prospects for finding love, but had never experienced actual prejudice because of it. I couldn't even fathom that. Why? Why would they even care? For the same reason, I reckon that the Enclave rewards it, Calamity said, approaching us with words prompting another wait. What? From the little pony inside my head. Population control. Small place like the Republic. I bet they needed as many babies as they could get. Lapbloom nodded, frowning. And if I wasn't going to contribute to the growth of the Republic, I wasn't wanted. And the Enclave? I asked, driven by my morbid curiosity. My pip leg hummed to life, the screen flashing status reports. I brought out my EFS and checked the most critical readouts. There's only so much cropland above the cloud curtain. All of it around those towers. Too many Pegasi means famine. The Enclave keeps real tight reins on childbirth. Officially, y'all are probably dead already, Calamity had told Tracker and the other Pegasi in New Appaloosa. By the weekend, the Enclave will have delivered condolences and new birth approval certificates to your families. Being allowed an extra foal is one of the perks a Pegasus gets for enlisting with the Enclave, Calamity admitted. So while there's nothing official, the Enclave has a little extra appreciation for those officers who won't be taking advantage of that benefit. I sat and thought about that for a moment, then shook it off like a wet coat. We really need to go. I stood up, looking down to Lifebloom. But when we get back, I want to hear everything you have to tell me about Homage. He gave me an odd look. I'm not prying, I explained. I miss her. Within minutes, we were soaring through the smoke. Beneath us, we could see the flames burning through the forest. True to Reggie's claim, the trees were not burning, although occasionally it appeared they were, as the moss or vines clinging to them were cremated. We were all wearing scarves to prevent us from the worst of the smoke, but only mitigated the foulness. My lungs burned, my eyes were stinging, and felt hot in my skull. Most of that was from the smoke, but not all of it. I was exhausted, even more so after hearing Watcher's soul-crushing news. It took massive, almost monumental effort just to keep my eyes open. Phoot! I yelped as something struck my left hind hoof, and lanced pain, followed by a burning sensation. I lifted it, spotting a dark-like thorn impaling the underside of my hoof. The burning increased. Poison. Phoot! 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 God dang it! Calamity hollered, banking sharply in the air, as more plant spikes. A patch of forest vegetation was shooting at us. Goddesses, I hated this forest. The plants stopped shooting as the fires reached them. Calamity braved thicker smoke in an effort to keep us out of range of any more of the Everfree's hostile plant life. The fire in my hoof started to climb up my leg, aching painfully. But I'd suffered so much worse. Hell, I'd been set on fire by a dragon. Compared to that, hell, compared to the pantheon of hurts from the battle with the Wonderbolts, the plant spike poison was trivial. We were catching up to the overcast, but it was taking time. I held off activating my MG Stealth Buck 2 for fear that it would run out before we had secured a hiding place on the Thunderhead. I closed my eyes for a few minutes. I was using my levitation to make myself weightless in Calamity's arms. I felt safe there. I could close my eyes for just a minute. I was Rainbow Dash. The clouds were a beautiful white, fluffy, and soft under my hooves, and they stretched out forever beneath the warm glow of Celestia's sun. I could see colorful Pegasi flitting and flying around. There was a town nearby, but I wasn't looking at it. I didn't want to. Instead, I looked at the ocean of white that rolled out beneath a canopy of brightest blue. I was Rainbow Dash, and I was not a happy pony. Everywhere under these clouds was Equestria, or what was left of it. Everywhere beneath was a nightmarish hell, where those ponies unfortunate enough to not be in a stable, and not to be killed by the onslaught, were struggling and dying. And I was watching ponies fly around, happily ignoring what was out of sight beneath what some ponies were beginning to call the cloud curtain. It wasn't right. Never mind that all my friends, all of them, were somewhere down there, and I didn't know if they were dead or alive. I couldn't just live up here and pretend Equestria didn't exist anymore. I couldn't understand the temptation, true, but I wasn't that kind of pony, and it hurt more that my heart could bear that apparently the rest of the Pegasi were willing to be. I wanted to be disgusted at all of them. Instead, I just felt sad. I was Rainbow Dash, and I was ashamed to be a Pegasus. If this was what a Pegasus meant now, well, maybe it was time for me to go. I felt my wings flap, slowly lifting my hooves off the clouds. I loved flying, but today, I could barely find the inspiration to lift myself. My head drooped low, my body hanging from my wings like dead weight. My hooves brushed against the clouds as I began to move. I turned around, my back to the colorful flying ponies. I took one last glance backwards before flying away. I awoke in a coughing fit, violent enough that Calamity crushed me to him to keep me from jerking out of his forelegs. Below us, we were passing over part of the fire brigades moving through the already burned part of the forest. I watched as a unicorn marched forward before a wing of red-eyed griffins, her horn glowing. The glow spread out over the ground in front of her, lighting a large swath of blackened forest floor. A moment later, the ground churned, tearing itself apart. The griffins swept forward with their flamethrowers, setting ablaze the tangles of blue vines that the unicorn's tilling spell had uncovered. "Whoa there, little Pip," Calamity comforted. "You okay there?" Yes, sorry. I apologized, bringing my levitation field back up and around me. Dozed off. "Yeah, I reckon when we get aboard, we're gonna find you a place to lay low, and you're gonna take a nap." Ahead of us, the overcast loomed closer. We would be on within a few minutes. We might only get a couple hours, but that's a couple hours better than none. I turned on my advanced stealth buck. We were getting close enough that all of us needed to be invisible. Reggie and Calamity followed suit, donning their hoods of the zebra stealth cloaks. A strange silhouette shot out of the sky. A dark figure, the size and shape of a pony, but with leathery bat wings that reminded me strongly of Zenith and her flying amulet, and impacted one of the raptors like a bullet. "What the hells was that?" Reggie's voice blurted. "Either of you see that too?" The raptor began to veer off, moving away from the thunderhead. I floated my earbloom into my ear and quickly sought out the Enclave's military channel. "Been breached. I repeat, we have unknown hostiles aboard." The voice of the Raptor's communication officer sounded professional, unconcerned, even bored. "Disengaging from positions to deal with the intruders." The Overcast was still hours away from the cathedral, and attacks were already starting. I had no doubt that Red Eye was behind this attack, but something wasn't just right. Sending a single creature against them wasn't going to stop them. It wouldn't even slow them down. And that meant it wasn't intending to. "Acknowledged, Raptor Lenticular. Rendezvous at the target as soon as you have exterminated the infestation." I suspected, rather, that Red Eye was looking to soften up the Enclave a bit before pulling whatever big surprise he had hidden beneath his cloak. "Lenticular Overcast." This time, the officer's voice sounded panicked. "It's the demon. I repeat, the demon is on board." "The what now?" Reggie started to say something, but I waved a hoof at her to be quiet, which in retrospect was really silly since I was invisible, my attention fully on the conversation on my earbloom. "Overcast to Lenticular. Please confirm. Are you reporting that the monster which downed the Mamaltus is..." The officer aboard the Overcast never got to finish his question, much less get an answer. A loud whine tore at my eardrum, and the Enclave's inner warship military channel became death. I bucked in Calamity's grasp, my vision going red as agony tore through my brain and took hold of my horn. I quickly shut off my Pip-Legs radio, gasping and wiping blood from my eyes. Whatever was aboard the Lenticular had just infected the military channel with a Canterlot signal by Luna's Main. We had run into corrupt broadcasters in Zebratown. Even with Canterlot itself gone, any broadcasters that survived would still create a zone of deadly noise. Hell, still had one of those in my saddlebags. It had never occurred to me that some pony might think to use one of those devices to actually broadcast across a normal channel. Fortunately for the Enclave, all they had to do to survive was just turn the radios off. But this meant that they were about to fly into battle against Red Eye's forces without their communications. The battle was engaged. The burning of my hoof had consumed my entire left hind leg before fading dully. My leg felt stiff and swollen, but the worst seemed to be over. The plant-spiked poison was far from lethal. At least, not to anything larger than a rabbit. Aside from the earlier plant attack, the stealth mission seemed to be going perfectly. No pony shot at us as we drew close behind the Overcast. All the Thunderhead's dangerous magical weapons were pointed forward. We just needed to fly up to a hatch, pick the lock, and slip inside. And with Calamity's knowledge of the Thunderheads, we had found the hatch in no time. I cursed the Enclave, the Pegasi, and the entire concept of wings the moment I saw it. Fucking cloud locks. "Ain't gonna be able to pick this one," Calamity said, his voice muffled. I wasn't sure if he was talking to himself or me. Probably both. "Rainbow," I called out, as loudly as I dared, this close to the Overcast. "Dash," came the muffled response. Unlike stealth bucks, the zebra cloaks dampened sound, which was impossible to tell where Reggie was. But at least she was still close by. "Okay, backup plan," Clemity announced, just loud enough for Reggie, we hoped, to hear. We couldn't actually be sure where the griffin was, and had already resorted to call-response navigating. I had begun to regret not using a rope to tie ourselves together. We get up to this thing near one of the landing bays and wait for some pony to open the door. With that, Clemity beat his wings, drawing us higher. Below us, the hatch hissed open. "Coming?" the muffled voice of the griffin asked. I tried to exchange a look with Calamity, and of course, totally failed. Honestly, the way you two act, you'd think little Pip is the only one in the entire wasteland who can pick a lock. We were inside the corridors of the Overcast. The thrumming of its thunderclouds rumbling against hull. The vibrations mixed with the hum of the lights. The hum seemed deeper in here than in the Raptor Pyrocumulus, or inside the stables. More ominous, but that could have been just my imagination. The voices of Pegasus ponies were omnipresent, in all but the most isolated passageways. The corridors were painted black, making the lights seem to provide stunted illumination. Colored stripes ran down the middle of the walls, like an abbreviated rainbow. The paint reflecting the light of the rest of the walls, absorbed, making them seem to glow. The colored lines weren't solid, but had slanted breaks, and they would change, dropping away or being added as we moved through the ship. I gleaned that they were some sort of color-coded guidance strips that would tell the Enclave Pegasus if the hallway they were in would take them to the section of the massive ship that they wanted to be in. There were monitors placed at intervals along the wall, each glowing with the Enclave symbol, an emblem of clouds and wings with a pair of eyes gazing out from a shelter in an arc, green and purple on black. We moved quietly, holding each other by the tails, Calamity taking the lead. My hind leg made walking unpleasant, and a bit difficult. Fortunately, sneaking through the bowels of the Overcast didn't require me to run. I felt awkward and uncomfortably warm, with Regina Grimfeathers biting my tail. I tried to focus forward, and immediately regretted it. It tasted like Calamity hadn't washed his tail in weeks. I knew that couldn't exactly be true. Velvet Remedy would never stand for that. But that didn't change anything. I fought a slow-rising battle against my gag reflex. I survived about 5 minutes and 2 floors, waiting until we reached a secluded stairwell before I spit on my friend's tail, and dry-heaved in a corner. I felt Regina Greenfeathers spit on my own tail, snarking, "Yeah, like yours is a picnic." If I was beginning to understand the Overcast's guidance scheme, the strips that flanked the metal stairs suggested that we were midway between the barracks and the Overcast's medical bay, with a longer path upwards towards the officers' quarters. I would have expected such a stairwell to be in heavy use, but it was utterly empty. "Hang on here, little Pip," Calamity ordered. "I'll go run up and give me some Enclave armor. The barracks are on the floor below, opposite the rec center." We had skirted what Calamity referred to as the rec center on our way to the stairwell, getting a good look at it through a large set of observation windows. It was a large 3-story open room, filled with mares and stallions exercising, lifting weights, and even flying through obstacle hoops, all out of armor and uniform. A third of the room was a cloudball court, and there had been nearly 24 sweaty Enclave mares and stallions faced off in a friendly game. I'll admit, watching some of those mares temporarily distracted me from the disgusting taste in my mouth. It made sense that the ponies down here or down there had suits of armor nearby. But, alone? In the barracks? Reggie asked, echoing my concern before I had fully formed it. But then she added, how about we just wait here for the next Enclave bastard to come down these stairs, and take him out? I'll use Cage's knives, real quick and quiet. No, I insisted, taken aback. Fighting the Enclave in battle was one thing, but that was murder. My brother needs to be put down. Yes, Calamity said sternly. But most of these ponies ain't evil. They're just following orders. We ain't killing any pony we don't have to. None of these ponies are innocent, Reggie hissed. Some of these ponies might be, Calamity countered. I don't recall the Overcast getting directly involved in the fighting anywhere yet. That's not how we do things, I added, only for Reggie to scoff. Oh please, Reggie repunctuated. I'm a child of God, remember? I know all about what you did at Shattered Hoof. You're an assassin when it suits your cause. I flinched. I really didn't want to think of myself that way. But Regina was right. And I deserved the sucker punch to my self-image to knock me off my pedestal. Still, mentally smarting, I changed tactic. Okay, you're right. But so is Calamity. We've already seen crew rebellions. There's a chance many of these ponies would side with us, given half a chance and a touch of perspective. Well, they sure as hell won't if you start slitting their throats in the stairwell. Reggie seemed to accept this. She fell silent. I moved amongst a few Enclave crates, stored beneath the stairwell, and laid down, beginning to drift asleep. Calamity, I assumed, moved off to fetch the armor. I couldn't really tell, but it was a safe assumption. But either way, he and Regina weren't arguing or bringing up unpleasant points of morality anymore. Peace and quiet. Time for a nap. Too quiet. Rainbow, I whispered. Dash.